They shaved a waitress's head for fun, then 50 Hell's Angel walks in. Lily stood before the ornate mirror in the staff room, her fingers trembling slightly as she smoothed down her crisp black uniform. The reflection showed a beautiful young woman with long chestnut hair that cascaded past her shoulders in gentle waves. She took a deep breath, adjusting her name tag one last time. Just another evening, she whispered to herself, trying to calm her nerves. But something felt different tonight. The air seemed heavier somehow, charged with an unseen tension. Through the staff room door, she could hear the growing buzz of conversation as guests arrived for the hotel's annual charity gala. Crystal glasses clinked, and elegant music drifted in from the grand ballroom. Lily straightened her shoulders and stepped out into the corridor. The ballroom was a sight to behold. Massive crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the polished marble floors. Fresh flowers adorned every table, their sweet perfume mixing with the aroma of gourmet hors d'oeuvres. Men in expensive suits and women in designer dresses mingled, their jewelry catching the light. As Lily made her way through the crowd with her serving tray, she felt Gregory's eyes following her. The hotel manager stood near the bar, his usual smug smile playing on his lips. She'd learned to recognize that look. It meant trouble was brewing. "Matthews," Gregory's sharp voice cut through the ambient noise. "Come here." Lily's stomach tightened as she approached him. His perfectly pressed suit and slicked back hair couldn't hide the malice in his eyes. "Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today." "Now back to the story, sir?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "You've been serving the wrong champagne to table 7, he said loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Do you have any idea how much that wine costs?" Lily's cheeks flushed. She had been certain she'd followed the evening's wine list exactly. "I'm sorry, sir, but Sorry doesn't cut it," Gregory interrupted, his voice rising further. More heads turned their way. "You need to learn your place here, Matthews. You think because you're pretty, you can get away with anything?" The room grew quieter as people stopped to watch. Lily's heart hammered in her chest as Gregory reached behind the bar and pulled out an electric hair clipper. "Since you seem to spend more time primping that hair of yours than doing your job properly," he said with a cruel smile, "perhaps we should remove the distraction." Lily's blood ran cold. "Mr. Hayes, please." "Either you shave it off right now, or you're fired," Gregory announced, holding out the clippers. "Your choice." Tears stung Lily's eyes as she looked around the room. Some guests were whispering behind their hands, others openly staring. A few even looked amused. Not a single person stepped forward to help. With trembling hands, she took the clippers. The weight of them felt like lead in her palm. Gregory directed her to stand in the center of the room where everyone could see. The buzz of the clippers filled the sudden silence as she switched them on. Lily's vision blurred with tears as she raised the clippers to her hairline. The first pass left a stark path through her beautiful hair, dark strands falling to the marble floor like dead leaves. She could hear muffled laughter, the click of phone cameras, the murmur of judgmental voices. Each pass of the clippers felt like another piece of her dignity being stripped away. Gregory watched with satisfaction as her hair fell away, leaving her exposed and vulnerable under the glittering chandeliers. The final pieces of her long hair joined the pile at her feet. Lily stood there, head bald and gleaming under the bright lights, as the room filled with the sound of cruel laughter. Her whole body shook with humiliation as tears rolled down her cheeks. Lily's fingertips brushed against her bare scalp, the unfamiliar smoothness making her stomach lurch. Bits of her beautiful chestnut hair lay scattered around her feet like fallen autumn leaves on the pristine marble floor. The bright chandelier lights felt harsh and exposing on her newly naked head. Gregory circled her like a shark, his expensive leather shoes clicking against the floor with each step. "Now that's much better," he said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "Maybe this will teach you some humility." The ballroom had fallen into an uncomfortable hush, broken only by scattered whispers and muffled giggles. Lily could feel dozens of eyes on her, some filled with pity, others with cruel amusement. Her shoulders trembled as she fought to keep her composure, but each passing second felt like an eternity under their scrutiny. A woman in a designer dress pointed her phone at Lily, not even trying to be discreet as she recorded the humiliating scene. The flash from another guest's camera made Lily flinch. Her legs felt weak, but she couldn't move. Gregory still hadn't dismissed her, and she knew running would only make things worse. "I think everyone could use a drink," Gregory announced to the room, clearly pleased with himself. "Let's toast to our waitress here, who's finally learned that looks aren't everything." He raised his champagne glass, and several guests followed suit, their jewelry glinting in the light. Lily's vision blurred with unshed tears. The elegant ballroom that had once felt magical now seemed suffocating. The flower arrangements she had admired earlier now appeared garish and mocking. Even the soft classical music playing in the background felt like it was taunting her. "Please," she whispered, though she wasn't sure what she was pleading for. Permission to leave, for someone to help, or for the ground to simply swallow her whole. Gregory leaned in close, his cologne overwhelming. "What was that?" "Speak up, Matthews. You're being rude to our guests." A tear, finally, escaped, rolling down her cheek. Lily quickly wiped it away, but more followed. The weight of her humiliation pressed down on her chest until each breath felt like a struggle. The sound of multiple motorcycles rumbling outside cut through the uncomfortable atmosphere. The noise grew louder and louder until it was impossible to ignore. Then, without warning, the ballroom's double doors burst open with a thunderous bang. 50 men in leather jackets strode in, their heavy boots echoing across the marble floor. Patches on their backs identified them as hellsangels, and their presence immediately commanded attention. The party guests scrambled back, creating a clear path through the ballroom. From among them emerged a man who carried himself with quiet authority. His face was weathered, and his gray beard was neatly trimmed. Despite his intimidating appearance, there was something gentle in his eyes as they landed on Lily's trembling form. "What kind of man does this to a young woman?" His deep voice carried across the silent room. He stepped forward, and even Gregory took an instinctive step back. "I've seen enough cruelty in my time to recognize a bully when I see one." The man, who would later introduce himself as Jack, moved to stand between Lily and Gregory. His presence felt like a shield, and for the first time since the nightmare began, Lily felt a small measure of safety. "This stops now," Jack declared, his tone leaving no room for argument. The other Hell's Angels spread out around the room, their faces stern and determined. Gregory's face turned an ugly shade of red as he tried to maintain his composure in front of Jack. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the power dynamic in the room shifted dramatically. "This is a private event," Gregory sputtered, straightening his tie with trembling fingers. "You have no right to be here." Jack's weathered face remained calm, but his eyes held steel. "Rights?" He glanced at Lily's shaved head, then back to Gregory. "Let's talk about rights. Like the right to basic human dignity." Several of the Hell's Angels moved closer, their leather vests creaking. The party guests pressed themselves against the walls, champagne glasses clutched tightly in manicured hands. The classical music continued to play softly in the background, creating an oddly gentle backdrop to the tense confrontation. "I won't be threatened in my own hotel," Gregory declared, though his voice wavered slightly. He turned to the crowd, seeking support. "Someone call security." "Already taken care of," one of the angels called out, his voice gruff but controlled. "They agreed you need to leave." Lily watched the scene unfold as if in a dream, her hand still occasionally touching her smooth scalp. The shock had left her feeling disconnected, like she was watching everything happen to someone else. Jack took another step toward Gregory, his presence filling the space between them. "You have two choices. Walk out of here with what's left of your dignity, or we'll help you find the exit. Either way, you're leaving." The other angels moved in perfect sync, creating a clear path to the door. Their coordinated movement spoke of years of working together, of understanding each other without words. Gregory's eyes darted around the room, searching for allies, but found none. Even his most loyal employees had backed away, their faces turned aside in shame or discomfort. The wealthy guests who had laughed at Lily's humiliation moments ago now studied their shoes or the ceiling, anything to avoid meeting his gaze. "This isn't over," Gregory hissed, but his threat sounded hollow in the vast ballroom. Two angels stepped forward, their intentions clear. "Yeah, it is," Jack replied simply. He nodded to his men. The angels flanked Gregory, not touching him, but making it clear he had no choice. The crowd parted as they escorted him toward the exit, his expensive shoes squeaking slightly on the marble floor. Just before he reached the door, Gregory turned for one last glare at Lily, but Jack stepped into his line of sight, blocking his view. The double doors closed behind them with a heavy thud, leaving the ballroom in uncomfortable silence. The remaining angels stood guard, ensuring Gregory wouldn't return. Lily remained rooted to her spot, surrounded by the scattered remains of her hair. Her uniform felt too tight, too exposing. The reality of what had happened, both the humiliation and the rescue, started to sink in, making her shoulders shake. Jack approached her slowly, like one might approach a frightened animal. His voice, when he spoke, was surprisingly gentle for such a large man. "No one deserves to be treated like that, sweetheart. Not ever." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes again, but these were different from before. These came from relief, from the simple kindness of a stranger standing up for her when no one else would. She started, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't understand why you helped me." Jack's eyes crinkled with warmth and understanding. "Because it was the right thing to do. Sometimes that's all the reason you need." The hotel's restaurant was nearly empty now. Most of the gala guests had left, eager to distance themselves from the earlier drama. Lily sat at a corner table with Jack and 3 other Hell's Angels, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. The white tablecloth felt impossibly soft under her fingers. "You should eat something," Jack said, pushing a menu toward her. His weathered hands were gentle despite their strength. "Food helps after a shock." Lily stared at the menu, the words blurring together. One of the angels, a man with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes, waved over a waiter. "We'll have the chicken soup to start," he said. "And some bread." "I can't," Lily began, her voice trailing off. I don't have—" "Don't worry about it," Jack interrupted softly. "Tonight's on us." He removed his leather vest, draping it over the back of his chair, revealing a faded army t-shirt underneath. The waiter returned quickly with the soup and a basket of warm bread. The steam rose in delicate swirls, carrying the comforting scent of home-cooked meals. Lily's hands trembled as she picked up the spoon. "Small sips," Jack advised. "Take your time." As Lily ate, the warmth of the soup seemed to thaw something inside her. The angels chatted quietly among themselves, their presence creating a protective barrier between her and the rest of the world. Nobody stared at her shaved head or whispered behind their hands. "I don't understand," Lily finally said, setting down her spoon. "Why would you help someone like me?" Jack's eyes softened. "Someone like you?" He leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "Let me tell you something about someone like you. I see a young woman who showed up to work today with her head held high, despite working for a bully. I see someone who endured humiliation with more grace than those fancy folks who stood by and did nothing." Tears threatened to spill again, but Lily blinked them back. "I feel so... weak." "Weak," Jack shook his head. "When I came back from Vietnam, I couldn't even leave my house some days. The memories, the nightmares, they nearly broke me. But weakness isn't about falling down. It's about staying down." The other angels nodded, understanding in their eyes. One of them pushed his untouched bread toward Lily. "I lost everything back then," Jack continued. "My pride, my sense of self. But I learned something important. Nobody can take your dignity unless you let them. That man tonight? He tried to break you, but here you are, still standing." Lily touched her smooth scalp, self-consciously. My hair will grow back stronger, Jack finished. Just like you will. After they finished eating, Jack and the angels walked Lily to the restaurant's entrance. The night air was cool against her skin, carrying the scent of approaching rain. Jack reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a weathered business card. Here, he said, pressing it into her palm. If you ever need help or just someone to talk to, you call. Day or night. The card was simple, just his name and number printed in black ink. Thank you, Lily whispered, clutching the card like a lifeline. For everything. Sunlight crept through Lily's bedroom window, casting long shadows across her small apartment. She'd barely slept, tossing and turning as memories of the previous night played on repeat in her mind. The sound of the clippers, the cruel laughter, the feeling of helplessness. It all felt too fresh, too raw. Her feet touched the cold wooden floor as she made her way to the bathroom. Each step felt heavy, like moving through thick mud. The mirror awaited her, unavoidable and unforgiving. Lily's hand trembled as she reached up to touch her head, fingers brushing against the smooth skin where her long chestnut hair had once been. The face, staring back at her, seemed different somehow. Smaller, more vulnerable. Dark circles hung beneath her eyes, testament to her sleepless night. Without her hair to frame her face, she felt exposed, like a tree stripped bare in winter. Who are you now? She whispered to her reflection, watching as tears gathered in the corners of her eyes. The question hung in the air, unanswered. Moving to the kitchen, Lily went through the motions of making coffee, her movements mechanical and distant. The familiar routine offered little comfort today. Her phone sat on the counter where she'd dropped it last night, Gregory's cruel words still echoing in her head. Maybe now you'll learn your place. The coffee maker gurgled and hissed, filling her small kitchen with the aroma of fresh brew. Lily wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold the pieces together. The thought of going outside, of facing the world without her hair, it made her stomach twist into knots. How would she find another job? Who would hire someone who looked like this? She picked up a small hand mirror from her dresser, turning it over and over in her hands. Each glimpse of her reflection brought fresh waves of shame and uncertainty. The woman she saw didn't look like the confident waitress who had walked into work yesterday. This woman looked lost, afraid. The business card Jack had given her lay on her nightstand. Lily picked it up, running her thumb over the embossed letters. It seemed surreal, a hell's angel offering help to a waitress in distress, like something out of a strange dream. As if on cue, her phone buzzed, making her jump. An unknown number flashed on the screen. Lily's hand shook as she answered. Hello? Lily? Jack's gravelly voice came through, warm and familiar, despite having met him just hours ago. It's Jack from last night. Hope I didn't wake you. No, I was up, she said softly, sinking into her kitchen chair. Thought you might be. There was understanding in his tone. Listen, I know mornings after rough nights can be the hardest. How about we grab some coffee? My treat. Sometimes it helps to not be alone with your thoughts. Lily's throat tightened. The kindness in his voice made her eyes water again, but this time it wasn't entirely from sadness. I don't know if I'm ready to go out yet. Hey, no pressure, Jack assured her. But remember what I said last night? About staying down being the only real defeat? You don't have to face this alone, Lily. Something warm stirred in her chest, small, but undeniable, like a tiny flame fighting against the dark. There's a coffee shop around the corner from my apartment, she found herself saying, on Mason Street. I know the place, Jack replied, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Give me 20 minutes? Okay, Lily said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. 20 minutes. The bell above the door chimed as Lily stepped into Mason Street Diner, tugging nervously at the knit cap she'd found in her closet. The morning crowd had thinned out, leaving only a few regulars nursing their coffees. Jack was already there, his broad frame taking up most of a booth in the corner. He stood when he saw her, offering a gentle smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Morning, kid," he said warmly, waiting for her to slide into the booth before sitting back down. A waitress appeared with 2 steaming mugs of coffee, and Jack nodded his thanks. Lily wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic, drawing comfort from its heat. The diner smelled of coffee and pancakes, familiar and somehow soothing. She noticed Jack didn't pressure her to talk, just let her settle into the moment. "Vietnam," he said finally, his voice quiet but steady. "That's where I learned about real darkness. Not just the kind you see, but the kind that gets inside you." He took a sip of his coffee, his weathered hands steady around the mug. "I was just a kid myself, 19 years old and thinking I knew everything." Lily looked up, surprised by his openness. Jack's eyes were distant, seeing something far beyond the diner's worn Formica table. "Lost a lot of good friends over there," he continued. "Came back different. Angry. Couldn't sleep without seeing their faces. Couldn't walk down a street without checking rooftops for snipers." He shook his head slowly. "Spent years letting that darkness eat at me, blaming everyone else for what I was feeling." The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting stripes across their table. Jack traced a line in the sugar he'd spilled on the table's surface. "Then one day I realized something. The hatred, the anger, it wasn't hurting anyone but me. The people who'd hurt me, they weren't losing sleep. They weren't carrying that weight. I was doing it to myself." Lily's hands tightened around her mug. "How did you let it go?" "Learned to forgive," Jack said simply. "Not for them, for me. Learned that my worth wasn't tied to what happened to me, but what I chose to do about it." He looked at her directly now, his eyes kind but intense. "Took me years to figure that out. But you've got something I didn't have back then. People who understand, who want to help." Lily felt tears welling up in her eyes. She blinked them back, but her voice still shook when she spoke. I feel so stupid. Like maybe Gregory was right about me all along. That I'm nothing special, just..." She gestured helplessly at herself. "Look at me, Lily," Jack said firmly. "That man's words, they're poison. And like any poison, you've got to get it out of your system." He leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "You're not what he says you are. You're not what anyone says you are. You're what you choose to be." "I don't know how to be strong anymore," Lily whispered, a tear finally escaping despite her efforts. "He took that from me." "No," Jack said, sliding a napkin across the table to her. "He didn't take anything you can't get back. And you won't have to do it alone." He smiled, the kind of smile that reached all the way to his eyes. "Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let others help you stand back up." The morning sun cast long shadows through the coffee shop's windows as Lily pushed open the heavy glass door. Her fingers unconsciously reached up to touch her knit cap, making sure it was secure. The familiar scent of coffee beans and pastries filled her nose, but today everything felt different. Sarah, one of the baristas, nearly dropped the cup she was holding when she saw Lily. "Oh, hey," she said softly, her eyes darting away quickly. The usual morning chatter among the staff died down to uncomfortable silence. Lily kept her chin up as she walked to the break room, though her heart hammered in her chest. She could feel their stares following her, could almost hear their whispered conversations. The break room was mercifully empty when she entered. She stored her bag in her locker, took a deep breath, and tied on her apron. "Lily?" Marcus, her shift supervisor, appeared in the doorway. His face was pinched with concern. "You don't have to work today if you're not feeling up to it." "I'm fine," she said firmly, though her voice wavered slightly. "Really, I need to work." The morning rush came in waves. Lily threw herself into the familiar routine of taking orders and serving drinks. Some regular customers did double takes when they saw her, their expressions a mix of confusion and pity. Others pretended not to notice, their forced casualness almost worse than the stares. By early afternoon, her feet ached and her smile felt stretched thin. The bell above the door chimed, and she looked up to see Jack's broad frame filling the doorway. He was wearing his usual leather jacket, but his presence felt comforting rather than intimidating. "Rough day?" he asked quietly when she approached his table. Lily managed a small smile. "That obvious, huh?" "Your shift ending soon?" She glanced at the clock. "About 10 minutes, Jack nodded. "Good. How about a walk? Weather's nice." After her shift ended, Lily changed out of her work clothes and met Jack outside. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. The park across the street was quiet, with only a few people scattered on benches or walking their dogs. "You know," Jack said finally, "sometimes the worst things that happen to us end up being turning points." Lily glanced at him skeptically. "This is starting to sound like one of those everything happens for a reason speeches." Jack chuckled. "Nah, nothing like that. Just thinking about what you told me earlier, about loving the coffee business but hating where you work." "Yeah," Lily sighed. "I always dreamed of having my own place someday. Something small and cozy, where people would feel welcome, you know?" She shook her head. "But that was before everything." "Why before?" Jack stopped walking and turned to face her. "You've got the experience, got the passion for it. What's really stopping you?" Lily wrapped her arms around herself. "Money, for one thing, and," she hesitated, "what if I'm not good enough? What if Gregory was right about me?" "There it is," Jack said softly. "That's not your voice talking, Lily. That's his. And he's wrong." He gestured to a nearby bench, and they sat down. "You've got savings, right? And I know people who could help with the business side of things. Good people." "I don't know, Jack." Lily bit her lip. "Starting my own cafe. It's a big risk." "Life's full of risks," Jack said. "Question is, which ones are worth taking?" Lily's tiny apartment had transformed into a makeshift office. Notebooks and printed articles covered her kitchen table. Sticky notes dotted the walls, and her laptop glowed in the dim evening light. She'd been at this for hours after her shift, but the usual exhaustion wasn't there. Instead, her mind buzzed with possibilities. "Location, menu, equipment," she muttered, scribbling notes in her worn notebook. The margins were already filled with doodles of coffee cups and pastries. She'd downloaded sample business plans, researched local regulations, and even started a spreadsheet to track potential costs. Her phone buzzed with another notification from the small business owners forum she'd joined. The community there had been surprisingly helpful, sharing their experiences and offering advice. She'd spent her lunch breaks reading their stories, learning from both their successes and failures. Taking a sip of her now cold coffee, Lily pulled up another tab on her laptop. Property listings filled the screen, empty storefronts and former cafes waiting for new life. Some were way out of her price range, but others held promise. She touched her growing hair absently. It was still short, but soft fuzz now covered her head. Somehow, the physical change had started to feel less like a mark of shame and more like a symbol of transformation. Every morning, she looked in the mirror and saw someone different, someone stronger. The sound of knocking pulled her from her research. Through the peephole, she saw Jack's familiar figure standing in the hallway. "Come in," she called out, quickly clearing some space on her cluttered table. "Sorry about the mess." Jack entered, his eyes scanning the paper-covered walls with interest. "Looks like you've been busy." He picked up one of her notebooks, examining her neat handwriting and detailed sketches. "I have," Lily said, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. "Did you know there's an old bookstore for lease just 3 blocks from here? It already has a kitchen space, and the rent is actually reasonable." She shuffled through some papers until she found the listing. Jack settled into a chair, looking over the property information. "Good location," he nodded. "Lots of foot traffic from the college nearby." "Exactly," Lily pulled out her budget calculations. "I've been saving for years, and with my tax return coming..." She paused, reality creeping back in. "But it's still not enough." Jack leaned forward, his expression serious. "Let me help with the initial stages, Lily. I know people who can assist with renovations, get you good deals on equipment." Jack, I couldn't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. The angels and I, we look after our own. And your family now. Lily felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. She looked down at her plans, at all the dreams she'd carefully documented. Are you sure? Never been more sure of anything. Jack pulled out his phone. I've got a buddy who owns a restaurant supply company. Let me make a call, see what we can work out. As Jack dialed the number, Lily looked around her apartment, at all the research, all the planning, all the hoping. For the first time since that horrible night at the hotel, she felt truly, deeply certain about something. This wasn't just a dream anymore. This was becoming real. The morning sun cast long shadows through the empty storefront windows as Lily stood in the doorway of what could be her future cafe. The space wasn't perfect. Water stains marked one corner of the ceiling, and the walls desperately needed a fresh coat of paint. But something about it felt right. What do you think? The realtor, Mrs. Chen, asked, flipping through her paperwork. She was a petite woman with kind eyes who had shown Lily 3 other locations that morning. Lily walked across the worn wooden floor, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. The kitchen's smaller than I hoped, she said, peeking through the service window. But the location is prime, Mrs. Chen added. 2 blocks from the college, right on the main street. You won't find better foot traffic in this price range. Jack, who had been examining the electrical panel, joined them. The wiring's old but workable. Plumbing looks decent, too. He ran a hand along the counter. Good bones here, Lily. Lily closed her eyes for a moment, trying to picture it. Warm lighting, comfortable chairs, the smell of fresh coffee and baked goods. The vision was so clear it made her heart ache. The rent's at the top of my budget, she said, biting her lip. And the security deposit. About that, Mrs. Chen interjected. The owner requires first and last month's rent, plus 2 months security. Given your limited business history? Lily's heart sank. She'd been prepared for the usual requirements, but this was more than she'd saved. Her shoulders slumped as she looked around the space one last time. I can help with that, Jack said quietly. No, Lily shook her head firmly. I need to do this on my own. I appreciate it, Jack, I really do, but... Mrs. Chen cleared her throat. Perhaps we could look at some places in the outer districts? The rent would be more manageable. Actually, Jack spoke up. Again, I know the owner, Tom Richards. We go way back. Mind if I make a call? Before Lily could protest, Jack had stepped outside, phone to his ear. Through the window she could see him gesturing as he talked, his face serious. 5 minutes later he returned with a smile. Tom's willing to work with you. 1 month's security deposit, standard first and last. He knows you'll take good care of the place. Lily's eyes widened. Really? But how? Sometimes it's not what you know, but who you know, Jack winked. Tom's a good man. He believes in giving people a chance. Mrs. Chen brightened considerably. Well then, shall we discuss the paperwork? An hour later, Lily stood in her soon-to-be cafe, lease agreement signed and tucked safely in her bag. She pulled out her phone, starting to scroll through local contractors. I know some guys who could help with the renovations, Jack offered, watching her scroll. Good work, fair prices. Thank you, but I want to find my own contractors, Lily said, looking up from her phone. I need to learn how to do this myself. I hope you understand. Jack's face broke into a proud smile. I do understand, and I respect that. He looked around the empty space. You're gonna make something special here, Lily. I can feel it. Lily ran her hand along the counter, already planning where everything would go. It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, she felt truly in control of her future. The sound of hammers and power tools filled the air as Lily carefully made her way through her future cafe. Dust particles danced in the morning sunlight streaming through the newly cleaned windows. 2 contractors worked on installing the espresso bar while another team measured space for the display cases. Miss Matthews, Carlos, the lead contractor, approached with a clipboard. We need your input on the lighting fixtures. He pointed to several options laid out on a makeshift table. These are all within your budget, but each gives a different feel to the space. Lily studied the choices, picturing how each would look above the tables she'd selected. This one, she said, pointing to a simple but elegant industrial-style pendant light. It'll match the exposed brick perfectly. The bell above the door chimed as Jack walked in, followed by 3 other hellsangels. They looked out of place among the construction workers, their leather vests covered in patches and pins. Thought you could use some muscle today, Jack said, surveying the progress. Mike here used to work construction, and Tommy's got a good eye for detail. Lily smiled gratefully. The delivery truck's coming with the tables and chairs in an hour. I could definitely use the help. As the morning progressed, the space slowly transformed. The Hells Angels worked alongside the contractors, moving furniture and helping install fixtures. Lily watched as Tommy, a burly man with full-sleeve tattoos, meticulously arranged the chairs, ensuring each table was perfectly spaced. The menu board arrived, Carlos called from the back. Where do you want it? Lily walked over to the large chalkboard she'd ordered. She'd spent weeks perfecting her menu, balancing classic cafe fare with unique touches that would set her place apart. Running her fingers along the frame, she could almost see the daily specials written in neat chalk lettering. Right there, she pointed to the wall behind the counter, where everyone can see it when they walk in. Jack appeared beside her, wiping sweat from his forehead. Coming together nice, he observed. You've got a good eye for this stuff. Lily nodded, watching as Mike helped mount the board. I never thought I'd be doing something like this, she admitted. Making all these decisions, creating something from nothing. The afternoon wore on, and gradually the workers began to pack up for the day. The Hells Angels said their goodbyes, promising to return tomorrow to help with more deliveries. Soon, only Lily remained in the quiet space. She walked slowly through her cafe, taking in all the progress. The new paint brightened the walls, the restored hardwood floors gleamed, and the counter stood ready for its first customers. Even unfinished, it felt warm and welcoming, exactly what she'd dreamed of creating. Settling into one of the newly delivered chairs, Lily remembered that horrible night at the hotel. The memory of standing there, humiliated and broken, felt distant now, like it had happened to someone else. She ran a hand over her head, where her hair was starting to grow back in soft, dark stubble. Looking around at what she'd accomplished in just a few weeks, the permits secured, contractors hired, designs chosen, she felt a surge of pride. This cafe wasn't just a business. It was proof that she could rebuild herself, stronger than before. The setting sun cast long shadows through the windows, making the pendant lights she'd chosen earlier sparkle. Lily sat in the growing darkness, surrounded by the physical manifestation of her courage and determination, feeling for the first time that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Lily stood in the center of her cafe, surrounded by perfectly arranged tables and the gentle hum of the refrigerator cases. Everything was ready for tomorrow's grand opening. The floors gleamed, the coffee machines sparkled, and the display cases waited empty for the pastries that would arrive early the next morning. But instead of excitement, her stomach churned with worry. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to steady her shaking hands. The cafe suddenly felt too big, too ambitious. What had she been thinking? I can't do this, she whispered to the empty room. Her fingers brushed against her short hair, now grown into a pixie cut. The memory of that night at the hotel came rushing back. The cruel laughter, the buzzing of the clippers, Gregory's smirking face. Moving to one of the tables, she sank into a chair. What if people only came to stare at her, to whisper about the waitress who'd been humiliated? What if they took one look at her and decided her cafe wasn't worth their time? The thought of failing, of proving Gregory right, made her chest tight. She glanced at the chalkboard menu she'd spent hours perfecting. The carefully written items now seemed pretentious. Who was she to think she could run a business? She was just a waitress who'd gotten too big for her boots. Isn't that what Gregory had always said? The morning's delivery receipts sat in front of her, the numbers swimming before her eyes. So much money invested, so many people counting on her. The Hells Angels had helped with the renovations. Carlos and his team had worked overtime to get everything ready. And Jack had believed in her from the start. The bell above the door chimed, making her jump. Jack stood in the doorway, his weathered face creasing with concern as he took in her expression. "Thought I might find you here," he said, pulling out a chair across from her. "Getting cold feet?" Lily tried to smile, but couldn't quite manage it. "What if I'm not ready? What if everyone's just wasting their time believing in me?" Jack was quiet for a moment, his eyes taking in the cafe. "You remember what I told you about my first day back from Vietnam?" he asked finally. Lily nodded. He'd told her about his struggles, about feeling lost and unworthy. "I was convinced I didn't deserve a second chance," he continued. "Thought everything I touched would turn to ash. But then someone believed in me, really believed in me. And you know what? Sometimes that's all you need." He reached across the table, his calloused hand covering her trembling ones. "You've already done the hardest part, Lily. You got back up when they knocked you down. You built something beautiful out of ugliness. That takes more courage than most people will ever know." Lily looked around the cafe again, trying to see it through Jack's eyes. The warm lighting she'd chosen, the comfortable seating arrangements, the carefully planned menu. It was all exactly as she'd imagined it. "But what if," she started. "What if you succeed?" Jack interrupted gently. "What if this place becomes everything you dreamed it could be? You've earned that chance, Lily. Don't let fear steal it from you." His words settled over her like a warm blanket, pushing back the cold grip of doubt. She took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders. Jack was right. She'd already proven herself stronger than she'd thought possible. Opening day wasn't about proving anything to anyone else. It was about believing in herself. "We'll be here," Jack assured her. "Every step of the way." The morning sun streamed through the cafe's front windows, casting warm patterns across the freshly polished floors. Lily's hands trembled slightly as she turned the key in the lock, flipping the closed sign to open for the very first time. Outside, a line had already formed, curious locals mixed with the imposing figures of leather-clad Hells Angels. She took a deep breath, inhaling the mingled aromas of fresh coffee and warm pastries. The display cases gleamed, filled with carefully arranged treats she'd spent the early morning hours preparing. Everything was perfect, just as she'd planned. As she opened the door, the first customers streamed in, bringing with them a buzz of excited chatter. The Hells Angels took up their positions at various tables, their presence both protective and reassuring. They'd become such a familiar sight during the renovation that it felt natural to have them here now. "One cappuccino and a blueberry muffin," called out her first customer, a smartly dressed businesswoman. Lily's hands moved confidently over the espresso machine, the familiar motions calming her nerves. The woman's eyes widened at the first sip. "This is wonderful." More customers filtered in, and soon the cafe hummed with life. The sound of coffee grinding mixed with conversation and laughter. Lily moved between tables, checking on customers, accepting compliments, and managing her small staff with growing confidence. A group of college students clustered around the window seats, laptops open and coffee cups steaming. An elderly couple shared a piece of chocolate cake, speaking in soft voices. Two businessmen conducted an informal meeting over espressos. The scene was exactly what she'd imagined during those long planning sessions. Carlos, one of the Hells Angels who'd helped with the renovations, caught her eye and gave her a thumbs up. He was sitting with 3 other members, all of them looking surprisingly at home among the mix of customers. By mid-morning, the cafe was nearly full. The coffee machines hissed and steamed. The cash register chimed regularly, and the air was rich with the scent of success. Lily felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the steam from the espresso machine. The bell above the door chimed, and Jack walked in, his weathered face breaking into a broad smile as he took in the scene. He made his way to the counter, watching as Lily confidently prepared a complex order for a young mother with 2 children. "Looks like you didn't need to worry after all," he said when she finally had a moment free. His eyes crinkled with pride as he surveyed the bustling cafe. "I couldn't have done it without you," Lily replied, reaching across the counter to squeeze his hand. "Without any of you." "This is all you, kid," Jack said, gesturing to the thriving scene around them. "You took that spark of an idea and turned it into something real. That's what courage looks like." Lily looked around her cafe, and felt a surge of joy. The morning sunlight caught the metal of the espresso machine, making it gleam like a beacon. The walls she'd carefully painted, the furniture she'd selected, the menu she'd crafted, it all came together exactly as she'd dreamed. "You know what the best part is?" she said to Jack, watching as another group of customers walked in. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. "That's what home feels like," he said simply, and Lily knew he was right. The morning rush had become a familiar dance for Lily. She moved with practiced efficiency behind the counter, her hands flying between the coffee grinder and espresso machine. The regulars streamed in like clockwork, first the early morning joggers, then the business crowd, followed by the young mothers after school drop-off. "The usual, Mrs. Henderson," Lily called out to an elderly woman who visited every morning. The woman nodded, already settling into her favorite corner table with her romance novel. Two construction workers gave friendly waves as they collected their large coffees and day-old pastries, Lily's way of reducing waste while helping the community. Despite the exhaustion that crept into her bones from the long hours, Lily felt alive. Her cafe had become more than just a business. It was a gathering place. She loved watching friendships form between customers who'd started as strangers, sharing tables during busy hours. The hellsangels still dropped by regularly, though now they mixed easily with the other patrons. Carlos, one of the regulars, helped an older gentleman carry his coffee to a table, while another biker discussed classic motorcycles with a young professional in a suit. "You're running yourself ragged," Jack commented one afternoon, watching as Lily restocked the display case. Dark circles hung under her eyes, but her movements were still precise and determined. "I have to make sure everything's perfect," she replied, carefully arranging a row of lemon tarts. "The morning baker called in sick, so I came in at 4 to do the baking myself." Jack frowned, concern etching deeper lines in his weathered face. "You need to take care of yourself too, kid. Success doesn't mean much if you're too tired to enjoy it." Before Lily could respond, the cafe door opened and a tall woman in a crisp blazer walked in. Lily recognized her immediately, Margaret Chen, the city's most influential food critic. Her reviews could make or break any establishment, and she was known for her brutal honesty. The cafe fell quiet as Margaret took a seat by the window, pulling out her notebook. Lily's hands trembled slightly as she approached the table. "Welcome to Lily's," she said, proud that her voice remained steady. "Can I get you started with something to drink?" Margaret looked up, her expression neutral. "I've heard good things about this place," she said, her pen poised above her notebook. "I'll have your house blend coffee and whatever pastry you recommend." Lily nodded, her mind racing. She headed back to the counter, where Jack had been watching the exchange. "That's Margaret Chen," she whispered, her hands shaking as she reached for a coffee cup. Her review could change everything. "Hey," Jack said softly, catching her arm. "Remember who you are. You didn't build this place to impress critics. You built it because you have something real to offer." Lily took a deep breath, letting Jack's words sink in. He was right. She'd created this cafe from nothing, turned it into a place where everyone felt welcome. She didn't need to change anything for Margaret Chen. She selected her favorite cinnamon roll, still warm from the morning's baking, and prepared a fresh press of her house-blend coffee. As she arranged everything on a tray, she felt her confidence returning. Whatever Margaret wrote, this cafe was already a success in the ways that truly mattered. Lily sat alone in her cafe after closing, staring at her phone screen. Margaret Chen's review had just been published online, and each word felt like a tiny dagger. The critic had praised the warm, inviting atmosphere and exceptional customer service, but her assessment of the food made Lily's stomach churn. While the coffee selection shows promise, the review read, "Several pastries lack refinement. The lemon tarts are overly sweet, masking their citrus brightness, and the chocolate croissants need more lamination to achieve the proper flaky texture. The cinnamon rolls, though popular with regulars, could benefit from a lighter touch with the frosting. Her vision blurred as tears threatened to fall. She'd poured her heart into every recipe, testing and adjusting until she thought they were perfect. The morning regulars had never complained. In fact, they often told her how much they loved her baking. But now, with these harsh words in black and white for everyone to see, she felt exposed and inadequate. The cafe seemed different in the dim evening light, less magical, more ordinary. The cheerful yellow walls she'd chosen suddenly looked garish, and the carefully arranged display case felt amateur. Lily ran her fingers over the smooth counter she'd selected with such care just months ago. "Maybe I was fooling myself," she whispered to the empty room. "Maybe I'm not cut out for this after all." The bell above the door chimed, making her jump. Jack stood in the doorway, his leather jacket creaking as he moved into the cafe. "I saw the review," he said simply, pulling up a chair beside her. Lily wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed to be caught crying. "It's pretty bad, isn't it?" "Is it?" Jack picked up her phone, scanning the article. "Seems to me she liked quite a bit about this place." "Did you read what she said about my baking?" Lily's voice cracked. "She basically said I don't know what I'm doing." Jack set the phone down and looked around the cafe. "You know what I see here? I see a place that was empty 3 months ago, now filled with people every day. I see tables where strangers become friends. I see a woman who turned her humiliation into triumph." He gestured to the walls covered in local artwork, the comfortable chairs where people lingered for hours, the tip jar overflowing with customers' generosity. One critic's opinion doesn't erase all of this. "But what if she's right?" Lily asked, voicing her deepest fear. "What if my food isn't good enough?" "Then you make it better," Jack said firmly. "You think I learned to ride a motorcycle perfectly the first time? Hell, I dropped my first bike so many times, the guys never let me live it down. But I kept at it." Lily looked down at the review again, trying to see it through different eyes. Maybe the criticism wasn't a death sentence, but a roadmap for improvement. She thought about her lemon tarts. Perhaps they were a bit too sweet, and she'd always struggled with getting her croissants just right. "I could take some advanced baking classes," she said slowly, "and maybe experiment with different recipes." Jack smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "Now that's the Lily I know, the one who doesn't let setbacks keep her down." The early morning light filtered through the cafe windows as Lily measured ingredients with precise movements. Flour dusted her apron, and a smudge of butter marked her cheek. She'd been at it since 4 a.m., determined to perfect her chocolate croissants before opening. "Lamination," she muttered, carefully folding the dough. "It's all about the layers." She'd watched countless video tutorials over the past few days, taking meticulous notes on technique. Her hands were sore from rolling dough, but each attempt brought her closer to the flaky perfection she sought. The kitchen counter was covered in various attempts, some too dense, others promising. Between batches, she'd adjusted her lemon tart recipe, reducing the sugar and allowing the citrus to shine through. The new version made her smile, bright and balanced, just as the critic had suggested. Jack arrived just as she was pulling the latest batch from the oven. He sniffed the air appreciatively. "Smells like victory in here." "I hope so." Lily carefully broke open one of the croissants, listening for the crisp crackle of properly laminated dough. The inside revealed distinct, airy layers. "What do you think?" He took a bite, considering. "Now that's something special. The old ones were good, but these..." He paused, taking another bite. "These are worth writing about." Lily beamed, then turned to her list. She'd reorganized the entire menu, keeping customer favorites while introducing new items. Her cinnamon rolls now featured a lighter cream cheese frosting that complemented rather than overwhelmed the spiced dough. She'd even created a few entirely new offerings, including a savory breakfast pastry that her morning regulars had been raving about during testing. Throughout the morning, familiar faces began trickling in. Mrs. Henderson, who'd been coming in every day since the opening, tried the new lemon tart with her usual tea. "My dear," she said, eyes widening, after the first bite, "you've outdone yourself. This is absolutely divine." By lunchtime, the cafe hummed with activity. A young couple sat in the corner, sharing one of the new croissants. The woman closed her eyes in pleasure as she took a bite, and Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the ovens. Table 4 wants to know if they can order a dozen of the new pastries for tomorrow, Sarah, her newest employee, reported with a grin. They say they're the best they've had in the city. Lily looked around her cafe, at the regulars who'd stuck by her, the new faces drawn in by curiosity, and the comfortable atmosphere she'd created. The critic's words still stung a bit when she thought about them, but they'd pushed her to grow, to improve, to reach higher than she'd thought possible. Jack sat at his usual spot by the window, nursing his coffee and watching the scene with quiet pride. When their eyes met, he gave her a knowing nod. She'd turned the setback into an opportunity, just as she'd done with every other obstacle life had thrown her way. The cafe felt different now, more confident, more established. As Lily moved between tables, chatting with customers and collecting empty plates, she realized this space had become more than just her business. It was her sanctuary, her achievement, her home. Each satisfied smile, each empty plate, each thank you from a customer reinforced what she'd known deep down. She belonged here, and she was good enough. Sarah approached with another order slip. 2 more orders of croissants, boss. We might need to make another batch soon. Lily smiled, already rolling up her sleeves. Then let's get baking. The morning rush had just ended at Lily's cafe when she noticed something odd. A group of regular customers huddled near the door, speaking in hushed tones and casting worried glances her way. Their usual warmth was replaced with uncertainty, and they left without their usual cheerful goodbyes. Later that afternoon, Sarah approached Lily with concern etched on her face. Boss, I think you should know something. She twisted her apron nervously. There are rumors going around about the cafe. People are saying we're having financial troubles and might close soon. Lily's stomach dropped. What? That's not true at all. Where did they hear that? I overheard Mrs. Peterson talking about it. She said she heard it from someone at the Golden Crown Hotel. Sarah's voice grew quiet. Specifically from the manager there. The mention of the hotel made Lily's hands shake. She steadied herself against the counter, the familiar weight of anxiety pressing against her chest. Gregory. Of course it was Gregory. Throughout the day, more signs of his interference became apparent. A supplier called to confirm that they should start looking for other clients. A potential customer canceled a large catering order, citing concerns about the cafe's stability. Each incident carried Gregory's signature brand of manipulation. During the afternoon lull, Lily overheard 2 women at a corner table. I heard the owner doesn't even have proper training, one whispered. The hotel manager said she was fired for incompetence. Such a shame, her companion replied. The food is good, but if what they're saying is true... Lily's cheeks burned. She'd worked so hard to build this place, to create something genuine and welcoming. Now Gregory was trying to poison it with lies, just as he'd tried to break her spirit before. She spotted him later that day, standing across the street with that familiar smirk. He was watching customers leave her cafe, looking pleased with himself. When he saw her noticing him, he started walking toward the entrance. The bell above the door chimed as Gregory stepped inside. He looked around with exaggerated concern. My, quieter than usual, isn't it? Word must be getting around. Lily felt her hands clench into fists. She'd come too far to let him destroy everything she'd built. Walking up to him, she kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. I know what you're doing, Gregory. The rumors, the calls to my suppliers, it stops now. He raised an eyebrow, that smug smile still playing on his lips. I'm simply sharing my professional opinion about your establishment. Can't blame me if people listen. You're spreading lies because you can't stand that I succeeded without you, that I'm happier now than I ever was at your hotel. Gregory laughed, the sound harsh and dismissive. Succeeded? Please, you're running a pathetic little coffee shop. Give it time. People will see you for what you really are. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. A failure trying to play business owner. Get out of my cafe, Lily demanded, her voice firm despite the trembling in her hands. Or what? He straightened his tie, looking around at the few remaining customers who were pretending not to watch. You'll set your biker friends on me? How professional. He turned toward the door, that infuriating smile still in place. See you around, Lily. Well, as long as this place stays open. As he walked away, Lily felt the weight of his malice settling over her cafe like a dark cloud, but beneath the anxiety and anger, something else burned. Determination. She'd faced him down once before, and she'd do it again. This time, she wasn't alone, and she refused to let him win. Lily sat at a corner booth in her cafe after hours, surrounded by Jack and several other Hell's Angels. The evening light cast long shadows through the windows, and the smell of coffee lingered in the air. Her hands wrapped tightly around a warm mug as she recounted Gregory's visit. He's trying to destroy everything I've built, she said, her voice trembling slightly. The suppliers are getting nervous, customers are starting to believe his lies, and I don't know how to fight back against something like this. Jack's weathered face hardened as he listened. He'd seen that look of desperation before, in the eyes of too many good people pushed down by those with power. We're not going to let him win, Lily. Not this time. Bobby, one of the younger angels, leaned forward. I used to work security at that hotel. Gregory's got more enemies than friends there. The staff's terrified of him, but they might talk if someone gave them the chance. That's right, Mike, another angel, chimed in. My cousin works for the health department. Says the hotel's had some suspicious paperwork lately. Nothing concrete, but where there's smoke. Jack nodded slowly, his eyes thoughtful. Gregory's the type who thinks he's untouchable. Those are the ones who get sloppy, leave traces. He turned to Lily. We need to gather evidence, real proof of what he's doing. Not just to your cafe, but everything. But how? Lily asked, setting down her mug. He's careful. He always makes sure there's nothing that can be traced back to him. Everyone makes mistakes, Jack replied, especially when they're angry. And you've gotten under his skin, Lily. He wouldn't be here trying to tear you down if you hadn't. The angels began discussing strategies. Bobby would reach out to his old contacts at the hotel. Mike would talk to his cousin about those suspicious reports. Others volunteered to watch Gregory's movements, document his activities, and gather information from local businesses about his tactics. We'll need to be smart about this, Jack cautioned. Everything by the book. We're not giving him any ammunition to use against us. He looked at Lily with fatherly concern. Meanwhile, you keep running this place like nothing's wrong. Show him he can't shake you. Lily straightened in her seat, drawing strength from the support around her. I won't let him win. Not after everything it took to get here. That's my girl, Jack smiled. We'll start tonight. Bobby, get those hotel contacts together. Mike, see what your cousin can tell us about those inspection records. The rest of you, keep your eyes and ears open. Gregory's bound to slip up somewhere. The angels nodded in agreement, their determination filling the room. They understood what it meant to stand together against bullies and corruption. It was part of their code, something Gregory could never understand. Remember, Jack said, standing up, we do this right. No shortcuts, no intimidation. We're going to expose him for exactly what he is, and we're going to do it legally. Lily watched as the angels began organizing their plans, dividing up tasks and sharing contact information. These rough-looking men with hearts of gold had become her family, her protectors, and now her advocates in the fight against Gregory's manipulation. As they prepared to leave, Jack put a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder. We've got your back, kid. Gregory thinks he can bully anyone he wants, but he's never gone up against a family like ours before. The morning sun streamed through the cafe's windows as Lily wiped down the counter, her mind still processing last night's meeting with Jack and the angels. The bell above the door chimed, and she looked up to see a woman in her mid-50s, clutching her purse tightly. Are you Lily Matthews? The woman asked, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Lily nodded, studying the stranger's anxious demeanor. Can I help you? I'm Margaret Wilson. I used to be Gregory Hayes's executive assistant at the hotel. She lowered her voice, even though the cafe was empty. Could we talk somewhere private? Lily led Margaret to a corner booth, far from the windows. The woman's hands trembled as she placed her purse on the table. I saw what Gregory did to you at the gala, Margaret said, her voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't right. None of what he does is right. Lily's heart quickened, but she remained cautious. Why are you here, Mrs. Wilson? Please, call me Margaret. She pulled out a thick manila envelope from her purse. I kept copies of everything during my time working for Gregory. Documents, receipts, emails. I couldn't stand watching him hurt people anymore. Lily's hands hovered over the envelope, uncertain. Why now? Margaret's eyes welled with tears. I was too scared before. Gregory, he has a way of making people feel powerless. But when I heard he was trying to destroy your business, I knew I had to do something. How do I know this isn't a trap? Lily asked, remembering Jack's warnings about being careful. Because I was there when he planned the gala incident, Margaret admitted, shame coloring her face. I heard him laughing about it with his friends beforehand. I did nothing then, and I've regretted it every day since. Lily felt a mix of emotions wash over her, anger at the reminder of that night, sympathy for Margaret's obvious distress, and hope at the possibility of finally having concrete evidence against Gregory. In that envelope, Margaret continued, you'll find proof of health code violations he covered up, bribes he paid to inspectors, and documentation of how he's blackmailed other business owners in the area. There's also evidence of him embezzling hotel funds. Lily carefully opened the envelope, scanning through the papers inside. Her eyes widened at the detailed records, bank statements, correspondence, and even photographs. Gregory never thought I'd keep copies, Margaret explained. He always underestimated people he considered beneath him. That was his biggest mistake. This could help us stop him, Lily whispered, realizing the significance of what she held in her hands. Margaret nodded, standing up. Use it wisely. I've already found another job in a different city. I start next week. Gregory won't be able to retaliate against me there. Thank you, Lily said earnestly. I know how much courage this must have taken. Just promise me one thing, Margaret replied, adjusting her purse strap. Make sure he can't hurt anyone else. As Margaret walked toward the door, she paused. You're stronger than you know, Lily. Don't let him make you believe otherwise. Lily watched Margaret leave, the envelope heavy in her hands. For the first time since Gregory had started his campaign against her cafe, she felt real hope. She wasn't alone in this fight. Not only did she have Jack and the Angels, but there were others who had suffered under Gregory's cruelty who were willing to stand up against him. Lily's hands trembled as she walked into the offices of the Daily Chronicle, the city's most respected newspaper. The manila envelope felt heavy in her arms, weighted with the truth it contained. Jack had helped her organize the documents, making copies and highlighting the most damning evidence against Gregory. Sarah Chen, an investigative reporter known for exposing corruption, greeted Lily with a firm handshake. Ms. Matthews, please come in. Her office was small but organized, with news clippings covering one wall. Thank you for meeting with me, Lily said, settling into a chair. She placed the envelope on Sarah's desk, her heart pounding. Everything's in here. Proof of Gregory Hayes' illegal activities at the hotel and his attempts to sabotage local businesses. Sarah opened the envelope, methodically reviewing its contents. Her eyebrows rose as she examined each document. These bank statements, the correspondence, this is extensive. She looked up at Lily. And you can verify these are authentic? Yes, Lily nodded. They came from his former executive assistant. She kept copies of everything. Over the next hour, Lily shared her story, from the humiliation at the gala to opening her cafe and Gregory's subsequent attempts to destroy her business. Sarah took detailed notes, occasionally asking for clarification. This is exactly the kind of story people need to hear, Sarah said finally. It's not just about one man's corruption. It's about standing up to bullies who abuse their power. Within days, the story broke. Hotel manager's reign of terror exposed, screamed the headline. The article detailed Gregory's years of manipulation, corruption, and cruelty, with Lily's story serving as a powerful example of his tactics. The response was immediate. Customers flooded into Lily's cafe, sharing their own stories of encounters with Gregory. Social media exploded with support for Lily and condemnation for Gregory's actions. Local business owners began coming forward with similar experiences of intimidation and threats. Jack stopped by the cafe during the afternoon rush, proud but concerned. "You're doing great, kid," he said, watching the busy tables. "But stay alert. Gregory won't take this lying down." He was right. Gregory's retaliation came swiftly. He held a press conference claiming the documents were forged and that Lily was running a smear campaign against him out of spite. He brought in expensive lawyers who threatened lawsuits and tried to intimidate witnesses into silence. But Margaret's documentation was too thorough, too detailed to dismiss. Each time Gregory tried to discredit one piece of evidence, 3 more surfaced to support it. Former employees began speaking out, emboldened by Lily's courage. The truth was like a snowball rolling downhill, gathering size and momentum. Lily stood behind her counter, serving coffee and pastries, as television news crews set up outside her cafe. She'd declined most interviews, letting the evidence speak for itself. Her cafe had become more than just a business. It was a symbol of hope for others who had faced similar abuse of power. "Your raspberry scones are still the best in town," a regular customer said, offering an encouraging smile. "Don't let him distract you from what matters." Lily smiled back, grateful for the reminder. Despite Gregory's attempts to discredit her, she knew she had something he never would: genuine connections with people who believed in her. She continued serving her customers, staying focused on what she did best, even as Gregory's desperate attempts to maintain control began to crumble around him. Blue and red lights flashed across the hotel's grand entrance as police cars lined the circular driveway. Lily stood among the growing crowd, watching as 2 officers led Gregory Hayes through the revolving doors in handcuffs. His perfectly pressed suit was wrinkled now, his usual smug expression replaced by shock and disbelief. "Mr. Hayes, do you have any comment about the allegations?" reporters shouted, thrusting microphones toward him. Gregory kept his head down, but Lily caught the flash of anger in his eyes when he spotted her in the crowd. Detective Martinez approached Lily, notebook in hand. "Ms. Matthews, thank you for your cooperation in this investigation. Your evidence, combined with the testimonies we've gathered, helped us build a solid case against Mr. Hayes." Lily nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "What happens now?" "The hotel will be closed temporarily while we conduct a thorough investigation," Detective Martinez explained. "We've already uncovered evidence of tax fraud, embezzlement, and workplace harassment spanning several years." More police officers emerged from the hotel, carrying boxes of documents and computers. Hotel guests wheeled their luggage out the front doors, some looking annoyed, others fascinated by the unfolding drama. Staff members huddled in small groups, whispering among themselves. Margaret, Gregory's former assistant, appeared at Lily's side. "I never thought I'd see this day," she said softly. "Thank you for being brave enough to stand up to him. It gave the rest of us courage, too." Lily squeezed Margaret's hand. "We did this together." The morning sun climbed higher as Lily watched Gregory being placed in the back of a police car. His carefully constructed world of power and control was crumbling, and for the first time since that horrible night at the gala, Lily felt truly free of his influence. She walked the few blocks to her cafe, where a small crowd had gathered to watch the news on their phones. As she approached, they broke into spontaneous applause. Lily felt her cheeks flush with emotion. "There's our hero!" someone called out. "No," Lily said, unlocking the cafe door. "I'm just someone who decided not to let a bully win." Inside, she began her morning routine, finding comfort in the familiar tasks of preparing coffee and setting out fresh pastries. The news played quietly on the television mounted in the corner, showing footage of Gregory's arrest and interviews with former hotel employees. The bell above the door chimed, and Jack walked in, his weathered face creased with a proud smile. He wore his usual leather vest, but today he'd added an American flag pin, the same one he'd worn in Vietnam. Quite a morning, he said, joining Lily at the window. Together they watched as news vans gathered outside the hotel down the street. I keep thinking I'll wake up and find out this was all a dream, Lily admitted. Jack's steady presence beside her felt like an anchor. You earned this victory, kid. Every bit of it. Through the window they could see more reporters arriving, their cameras and microphones ready to capture the downfall of Gregory Hayes. But Lily's attention was drawn to her cafe's reflection in the glass, the warm lights, the comfortable chairs, the counter where she served not just coffee, but kindness to everyone who entered. This was her truth, her victory. Not just the arrest of a cruel man, but the life she'd built despite him. 3 months after Gregory's arrest, Lily's cafe hummed with life. The morning sunlight streamed through the large front windows, catching the steam rising from fresh coffee cups. The aroma of baked goods filled the air as Sarah, Lily's new pastry chef, pulled another batch of cinnamon rolls from the oven. These smell amazing, Lily said, inhaling deeply. She adjusted her bandana. She'd taken to wearing colorful ones since that night at the hotel, making them her signature style. Her hair was growing back, but she'd grown comfortable with her new look. The cafe had doubled in size, taking over the vacant space next door. Where there had once been empty walls, local artists' work now hung in neat rows. Comfortable armchairs and sofas created cozy nooks where students studied and book clubs gathered. A community bulletin board near the entrance overflowed with flyers for local events. Mrs. Peterson's writing group is coming in at 10, Tommy, one of the new baristas, reminded her as he wiped down the espresso machine. They asked for their usual corner. Lily nodded, straightening the fresh flowers on the counter. The writing group was just one of many regular gatherings that had made the cafe their home. On Wednesdays, they hosted an open mic night that packed the house. Thursdays belonged to a local knitting circle that had adopted Lily as an honorary member. The morning rush began, and Lily moved behind the counter to help. She knew most customers by name now, greeting them with genuine warmth. Good morning, Professor Davis. The usual today? You know it, Lily. The elderly professor smiled, adjusting his bow tie. And congratulations on the write-up in the local paper. Well deserved. The article had appeared yesterday, a feature story about local businesses that gave back to the community. Lily's cafe had been highlighted for its weekly soup kitchen volunteer program and its policy of providing free meals to anyone who couldn't afford them. Around noon, the bell above the door chimed, and Jack walked in, wearing his leather vest despite the warm weather. His eyes crinkled with pride as he took in the bustling scene. Place looks good, kid, he said, accepting the coffee Lily handed him. Black, no sugar, just like always. Really good. They sat at what had become their regular table by the window. Jack watched as Lily greeted customers and directed her staff with quiet confidence. Remember when you thought this was just a dream? He asked, his voice gentle. Lily smiled, touching her bandana self-consciously. Sometimes I still can't believe it's real, that I actually did it. You did more than just open a cafe, Jack said, leaning forward. You built a community. Look around. Every person here has a story, and they choose to share it here, with you. A young woman at the counter was showing Sarah pictures of her new baby. 2 teenagers in the corner were working on homework together, sharing a plate of cookies. An elderly couple by the bookshelf held hands over their coffee cups. I learned from the best, Lily said, meeting Jack's eyes. You taught me that strength isn't about fighting back. It's about moving forward, about creating something good from something bad. Jack pulled out a small package from his vest pocket. Speaking of moving forward, got something for you. Inside was a delicate silver pendant in the shape of a coffee bean. For new beginnings, he said. Though if you ask me, you've already begun. Lily touched the pendant, her eyes misty. Thank you, Jack, for everything. Just doing what any good father would do, he replied, raising his coffee cup. To new beginnings? Lily raised her own cup, her heart full. To new beginnings. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the cafe's polished floors as Lily arranged fresh flowers in mason jars. She paused, watching a young woman hesitate outside the window. The woman's head was wrapped in a scarf, and her shoulders hunched as if carrying an invisible weight. Lily recognized that posture. She'd worn it herself not so long ago. "Come in," she called out, opening the door. "First coffee's on the house." The woman startled but managed a small smile. I saw the article about you in the paper," she said softly. "About what happened at the hotel, and how you built all this afterward." "I'm Maria," she continued, fidgeting with her scarf. "I lost my hair during chemo. People stare. Judge. I haven't felt beautiful in months." Lily guided Maria to a quiet corner table. "I remember feeling that way," she said, adjusting her own bandana. Today's was bright yellow with white polka dots. "But you know what I learned? Beauty isn't in our hair or what others see. It's in how we rise, how we keep going." As they talked, other regulars began filtering in. Mrs. Chen from the bookstore next door brought fresh baked almond cookies. Detective Rodriguez stopped by for his morning espresso, tipping his hat to the ladies. Each customer had their own story, their own battle they'd fought or were fighting. The cafe had become more than just a business. It was a sanctuary. The walls, once bare, now displayed photographs of customers sharing their stories of triumph. A support group for cancer survivors met here every Tuesday. On weekends, Lily hosted workshops on building self-confidence and starting small businesses. Sarah, the pastry chef, emerged from the kitchen with a tray of lavender scones. "Fresh out of the oven," she announced, placing 2 on Maria's table. "Boss's special recipe." Lily watched as Maria took a tentative bite, her face lighting up at the taste. It was the same look Lily had seen countless times, the moment when someone realized they weren't alone anymore. The morning rush picked up, filling the cafe with the comfortable buzz of conversation and clinking cups. Lily moved between tables, touching base with regulars, learning new names, sharing smiles. Each interaction reminded her of how far she'd come from that horrifying night at the hotel. Around mid-morning, she noticed Jack's familiar figure through the window. He paused outside, taking in the scene through the glass, the full tables, the laughter, the sense of community that radiated from within. The bell chimed as he entered, and several regulars called out greetings. He'd become as much a part of the cafe's family as anyone else. "Place is buzzing today," he said, approaching the counter where Lily stood. "You've done good, kid. Real good." Lily led him to the front window, where they could see the steady stream of people entering and leaving. The street outside was alive with activity, and through the glass they could see Maria deep in conversation with another customer, her scarf now sitting looser on her head, her posture more relaxed. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Jack," Lily said, her voice thick with emotion. "You showed me the way when I was lost." Jack squeezed her shoulder gently. "Nah, you had it in you all along. I just reminded you to look for it." The afternoon sun streamed through the cafe's windows as Lily wiped down tables after the lunch rush. The bell above the door chimed, and she looked up to see a well-dressed man in an expensive suit entering. His polished shoes clicked against the hardwood floor as he approached. "Ms. Matthews?" He extended his hand. "I'm Richard Sterling from Sterling Enterprises. Do you have a moment to talk?" Lily gestured toward a corner table, curiosity piqued by his professional demeanor. As they sat, he pulled out a leather portfolio and placed it on the table. "I'll get straight to the point," Sterling said, his voice smooth and practiced. "We've been watching your cafe's success with great interest. The community you've built here, the atmosphere you've created, it's exactly what we look for in our acquisitions." He opened the portfolio and slid a document across the table. "We'd like to make you an offer to purchase your cafe." Lily's hand trembled slightly as she picked up the paper. When her eyes found the number at the bottom, her breath caught in her throat. It was more money than she'd ever imagined having. "That's just the initial offer," Sterling continued, noting her reaction. "We'd keep you on as a consultant, of course. Your vision would help us expand this concept across multiple locations. Think of how many more people you could help with that kind of reach." The words swirled in Lily's mind. With that money, she could secure her future, help her mother with medical bills, maybe even start something new. But as she looked around at the walls covered in customer photos, at the worn spots on the counter where regulars leaned to chat, something inside her hesitated. I need time to think about it," she managed. "Of course," Sterling smiled, sliding his business card across the table. Take 24 hours. But remember, opportunities like this don't come along often. After he left, Lily sat alone, staring at the offer. The cafe had been more than just a business venture. It was her sanctuary, her triumph over adversity. But wasn't this what success looked like? Wasn't this what she'd worked for? The bell chimed again, and Jack's familiar figure appeared. One look at Lily's face told him something was wrong. "What's eating at you, kid?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her. Lily pushed the offer toward him. "Sterling Enterprises wants to buy the cafe. The number, it's more than I ever dreamed of having." Jack studied the document, his weathered face thoughtful. "Money's good," he acknowledged. "But tell me something. When you open those doors every morning, what do you feel?" "Home," Lily answered without hesitation. "I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." "And when that young woman came in last week, crying because she'd lost her job, and you gave her coffee and helped her write a resume, what was that worth?" Lily's eyes welled up as she remembered. "You can't put a price on that." Jack reached across the table and took her hand. "Listen, kid. I've seen people chase money thinking it'll make them whole. But what you've built here, the way you've turned your pain into other people's healing, that's worth more than any number on that paper." Lily looked down at Sterling's business card, then at the wall of photos, each one a story of hope, of community, of resilience. She knew what she had to do. "I'm not selling," she said firmly, tearing the card in half. "This place isn't just mine anymore. It belongs to everyone who's found hope here." The morning sun painted golden streaks across the cafe's wooden floors as Lily arranged fresh flowers in small vases on each table. The aroma of freshly baked pastries and brewing coffee filled the air, mingling with the gentle hum of conversation from the early morning customers. She paused at the window, watching people stream in and out of her cafe. A young woman sat in the corner, typing on her laptop, the same spot where she'd written her entire novel over the past year. Two elderly gentlemen played chess at their usual table, their daily ritual bringing warmth to the atmosphere. A group of students huddled over textbooks, sharing notes and encouragement. Lily touched her head, where her hair had grown back into a stylish pixie cut. She'd chosen to keep it short, not as a reminder of that horrible night, but as a symbol of how far she'd come. Each morning when she looked in the mirror, she saw strength rather than shame. The bell chimed, and a mother with 2 small children entered. Lily recognized her as Sarah, a regular who'd recently left an abusive relationship. Sarah gave her a bright smile as she approached the counter. "The usual?" Lily asked, already reaching for the chocolate milk her kids loved. "You're a lifesaver," Sarah replied. "The kids were begging to come here all morning. This place, it's become our happy spot." Lily's heart swelled as she watched Sarah guide her children to their favorite corner booth. The cafe had become exactly what she'd hoped. Not just a business, but a sanctuary for people finding their way. The afternoon light was starting to fade when Jack's familiar figure appeared in the doorway. He looked around the bustling cafe with pride before making his way to the counter. Lily noticed something different in his expression today, a kind of peaceful finality. "Got time for an old bear?" he asked, his gravelly voice warm with affection. They sat at a quiet table near the back, where they'd had so many conversations over the past months. Jack ran his hand over the smooth wooden surface, worn from countless cups of coffee and shared stories. "You've done good here, kid," he said, his eyes taking in the thriving space. "Real good." Lily felt tears prick at her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you, Jack." He shook his head. "That's where you're wrong. The strength was always in you. I just reminded you it was there." He reached across the table and patted her hand. "But now it's time for this old bear to head out. You're leaving?" Lily's voice caught slightly. "Got some other lost souls that need finding," he said with a gentle smile. "And you? You're not lost anymore. Haven't been for a while now." Lily understood. Jack had always been like the North Star, there to guide her when she'd lost her way. But now she had her own light to follow. "Thank you," she whispered, squeezing his hand. For everything. Jack stood up, his leather jacket creaking softly. He looked around the cafe one last time, nodding with satisfaction. Without another word, he turned and walked toward the door. The bell chimed as he stepped out into the evening light. Lily watched through the window as his figure disappeared down the street. A smile spread across her face, bright and true, as she turned back to her cafe, her home, her triumph, her new beginning. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.